deep to left center field. Back it goes and gone. The 0-2 pitch. Hey, struck him out swinging at 101. Swinging a drive, left field and deep. Back it goes and gone. And the Twins walk it off again.
All right, it is Friday at 9:35, which time we visit with the television voice of the Minnesota Twins. Cory Provus joins us after a Twins victory last night over Toronto at Target Field. Did you feel like left out of the party? It was going on across the street and over in St. Paul last night?
My vision was taking me out to right field a lot.
I
because
bet.
the skyway that goes from, that would be from B to A, I guess, right? Or C to B, maybe. So we see that going right over the plaza and just the flow of traffic our game started at 6:40. So by 7:30, it seemed like a pretty consistent flow that was going into Target Center. But it was neat towards the end of our game, coincided with the third period of the Wild game. And these random roars that we'd hear from the crowd. I'd be like, okay, something good happened. It's reminiscent to what happens in September on Sundays when the Vikings are playing. Yep. We can see from our booth some of the suites, and they've got the Vikings game on. And so sure enough, you'll hear like a foul ball, and then all of a sudden this random eruption of noise, and like, oh, okay, Jefferson scored. So yes, that was pretty cool. But what a night, man! What a night here in the Metro. Everything going the way it did was awesome.
Last night, Ryan Jeffers a big night. Byron Buxton a big night. And what is it about the Twins and Kevin Gausman? They own him. It's just unbelievable.
Everybody to my face, and two others have said it's just a fluky thing.
Yeah.
I am waiting for the day to come when all these players retire and when Kevin Gausman is retired, that the secret comes out.
Yeah.
Because I have to think they do. The personnel changes, but for the most part, I mean, they still have Jeffers and Buxton, some of these guys, and Josh Bell had good numbers against Kevin Gausman, seeing him previously, so there's something to that. But, I mean, his velocity was still good. He was throwing 95, 96, and you may have seen more 90s and 91s, but that's what he's been doing this year. There was a great story from Chris Black, who helps produce the Blue Jays games on Sportsnet, that it's been kind of this odd graph of velocity ups and downs with Gausman. So that wasn't the issue. I just think they have a good read on him. And whatever it is, I think the secret eventually will come out. But it's going to take for all these guys to be out of the game.
Well, I can remember visiting with you the playoff series a few years ago when they were getting ready. I mean, that was a matchup the Twins hitters were drooling over, of getting a matchup with him.
Yeah, I mean, you thought that, but then there's also been starts where he goes 7 innings and strikes out 11 and gives up 2 runs. But then he has, last night wasn't terrible. I mean, he worked into the 6th inning, gave up 4 runs, a couple of home runs, but what was down was the strikeouts. And here's a guy that was averaging 10 strikeouts per 9 innings down. He only struck out 2. And that, to me, working the count, the foul balls, the Larnach at bats, the plate appearances, Austin Martin, even Cody Clemens had a few 3-2 counts. That matters. And Morning and I were talking about that last night, and there were some really positive signs here the first 5 weeks of the season offensively. And yes, they played more games in March than they normally do historically. So you can put an asterisk by a few things. I get it. But more walks than they've ever drawn to start a season. Yeah. The hits are in the top, I think, 5 all time. The run scoring is up there as well. But Morney said that the one element that he hopes can and should maintain is the walk rate. Because that's philosophy. That's just about what they're talking about in their daily hitters meetings. Because, yes, there were so much lefties that the Twins have seen here that there were more platoon-oriented lineups than I think they envisioned. But the walk rate is what it is. Yeah. And Morty's of the belief that can maintain as the season plays out.
All right, we've got a month into the season. We're going to look at the AL Central standings. Is it bad? Is it mediocre? How do you evaluate? We're a month in. We have enough data. Where are we at with the division in your mind?
It's kind of what I expected. I'm a little surprised with the Tigers, and they've been flirting with, I think they won yesterday, so they're either 500 or game up and down. They're right there. I'm just a little surprised with the Tigers because a year ago this time, they got off to a great start.
Yes.
They really did. So I thought they would have a similar start because they haven't had that many injuries. I mean, every team has something here right now. I thought Kansas City would be better. I thought the Royals would play better than they have. I haven't looked at their schedule too much, and maybe they played, tougher teams so far, and the opposing team's winning percentage is a factor there. I'm not, so much into that just yet, but I think there's more mediocrity, Dom, than I thought there would be. So yeah, it's been a bit surprising. I'm a little perplexed with how the division has played out here. Yeah, 30 plus games in.
So the bullpen again has been a roller coaster ride. Just what can Derek Shelton do? These are the pieces he has. I mean, it was going to be a mix and match kind of deal already. He said it wasn't going to be a prescribed closer. What are your thoughts on where they go with the bullpen after a month?
Well, here's what I'm thinking of doing is I wonder if, there's so many questions, but we rarely get the answers to the questions we want because nobody wants to reveal too much about what they're working on. But I wonder if a guy or two might add a pitch or change a grip on a pitch. You're not going to see a guy, Eric Orsi's not going to go from throwing 92 to 99.
Yeah.
That's just not going to happen. But I just wonder in some of these bullpen sessions, and I think it's easier to do for a bullpen guy than a starter, that if you try out a pitch, you modify your grip a little bit because they're just not generating enough swing and miss. And what they're doing as the weather warms, I don't see that improving.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm curious about. And I might ask LaTroy Hawkins about that, and he may give me an off-the-record answer, but it's something that you can find out even on some of these public websites with like Baseball Savant. They do track axis and then, some of the horizontal break and the vertical break of how pitchers are going. And if you're astute enough to really track them now to how they look, say in mid-June, there may be something to study there. That's kind of it's been on my brain here a little bit the last few days, especially because I know Shelty's frustrated because he was hoping that some of these roles were going to happen internally, that guys were going to pitch themselves because of performance into consistent high leverage roles. Clearly not happening. But again, I think none of this is a big surprise. I think if you asked me in January what I liked about the team and what I was concerned about the team, I was going to say bullpen and defense.
Yeah.
And so far, for the most part, those two are playing out.
There's an email here to ask you, following up on that, is there anybody in the minors they can bring up that they really like, or is this who they have they got to roll with?
I mean, Travis Adams just was reinstated to St. Paul yesterday. So he's a guy that he throws hard.
Yeah.
That he was a guy that we saw, the second half of last year. I think Kendry Rojas is going to come back into play here at some point, but I still remember that he struggled last year after the trade adjusting to the Major League ball. And the Major League ball, they use it obviously in the big leagues, but also AAA. They don't use that same baseball in AA. So he struggled after the trade with the AAA ball. Then he was in camp for a little bit. Then he got hurt. So he had a hamstring injury, and that's why he was a bit delayed. I don't think he's thrown enough innings at this point. I think they're going to give him another, I would guess, barring injury here from somebody else here. But in terms of just, I don't think there's this immediate rush to get him back up, but I think he will be back up at some point. And I wonder too about David Festa. Does he come back into the mix here at some point?
Yeah.
Osio, John Klein, he's a guy that certainly is intriguing. I think we're all waiting for Marco Raya to just go on a run here because that's the name we keep hearing about. But every time you look at the numbers, the ERA is high, the walk rate is high, and he's now a full-time bullpen guy. He's on the 40-man roster. So I think that's the guy that, going into the year, I'm like, okay, at some point we may see him, but he's got to perform. He's got to produce in St. Paul before that happens.
Kendry Rojas got a spot we only saw him for a little bit last week.
Yeah, I think, he's the guy again. But I think barring injury, he's the guy that I think would come back up if they play a doubleheader. If they play a doublehead, Dom, if they have that 27th man, that could be kind of the move because I believe that doesn't impact options. If you come up, if you're that 27th man, I don't think that has any impact on, that five-term option and all that stuff. I think that's not in play there. So he's certainly in play. But again, going back to what I said a moment ago about the ball, he's got to get acclimated more and more, get into a routine. I think a bit more before they bring him back up.
Describe what you saw here out of the last week in terms of just how odd it is. Again, they have one great game, and this is baseball where, hey, they come out, gangbusters one game, next game, and Seattle's in the same spot. Seattle and Toronto are two teams that played for the pennant last year, and both are underachieving so far? I know both are banged up, but it's just, is it hard to get a gauge against those teams because they're in the same boat that they're underachieving so far?
Well, Toronto is dealing with injuries galore.
Right.
Now, that being said, they saw Gausman last night, and they'll see Dylan Cease on Saturday. So they're seeing their top guys.
Yep.
They did not see either guy at Rogers Center 2 weeks ago. So they did kind of luck out in that regard, then in terms of who you're seeing. But George Springer just came back yesterday.
Yeah.
Alejandro Kirk is out. Addison Barger is out. They're missing some big time weapons here. But again, I think every team is. With Seattle, yeah, they're dealing with some things as well on their roster, but who isn't at this point?
Yeah.
I mean, outside of a few teams here and there that are generally, they're going to be pretty healthy. But there's something to be said about the offseason and how short it is for those teams that go far and the impact that has. Now, I think every team would take on that challenge, be like, I'd love to keep playing in October and play in November, bring it every time. So I'm a little surprised with how those teams are playing, but Toronto especially, because it's more present in my mind, is that you just look at who's been out.
Yeah.
I think that certainly has had an impact.
Let's break. We come back more with Cory. We'll chat a little bit more on Cory Provus, who made his home debut and was really good again earlier this week. We're talking about pitching. The Twins may have found one in their rotation. We'll wrap up hour one of Hot Mic. More with Cory Provus right after this. Welcome back, everybody. Wrapping up our first hour, back with Cory Provus. Twins and Blue Jays coming up 7 o'clock tonight. Play game 2 of that 4-game set. I got a bunch of emails coming in here. Another one asked about what's going on with Matt Wallner. And again, the struggles continue for him at the plate. I guess I'll end it with there. What's up with Matt Wallner and why the struggles continue?
It's a stunning turn of events for a guy that I think did tweak his stance and his swing, not drastically, but enough that gave him, I think, a better idea and a better game plan going into the year. But at some point here, I think they're going to have to send him down. I don't know when that happens, but they just can't. It's going to be curious to see about tonight if he's in the lineup tonight, because normally he does play against lefties. However, Trevor Larnach is, while he doesn't have historically the greatest numbers against left-handed pitching, he's not a liability right now in the outfield. He's not, and he's drawing more walks. I think he plays tonight. So, and that to me, it would be interesting to see, because Wallner does play against lefties, has played against lefties, but maybe not tonight. Martin's going to play, probably in right, and wouldn't shock me if we see Larnach in left. But I think at some point, the decision's going to be made, because it's just going to be better for him in the long run. With what's going on at the plate, the strikeout rate is way too high. It's not for a lack of effort. It's not that he's just showing up at the ballpark, putting on his jersey and going to play. He is working. I see him in that cage every day. He's trying his best to get out of it. But we've seen this spot before, where it's a struggle in April. He goes down, gets hot, and then he rejoins the team in June and July and then goes on a run. And it would shock me if we see that again.
167 and striking out 37% rate. That's going to get you sent down. No.
The only way you can maintain a daily presence is if you're hitting a bunch of home runs.
Right.
And you say, okay, that's a crazy strikeout rate. The batting average is low, but is there something else you're doing? And yes, he has this great arm. He made a nice running catch the other night as well in the Seattle series. But the counter has to be more power, and whether that's home runs, doubles, he's got that. That has to be the other side of it if he's going to strike out at that rate.
Does that mean Emmanuel Rodriguez be the guy next up if he goes down, if Wallner goes down?
I would think so. He's on the roster, and Alan Roden would have been on my radar too, but he's hurt right now. He's got a labrum injury, no surgery right now planned for Roden, and what's also on my radar here is about the lockout and how that could impact the 40-man guys.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on the 40-man, because the minor leagues are going to play. Maybe we haven't talked about that yet. Remember, there's a union now for the minor leagues.
Yes.
And there is going to be minor league baseball next year. Their CBA does not coincide in terms of a timeline as the same as the big league CBA. So minor league baseball is going to be played. However, my understanding is, who's not going to be playing in those minor league games is guys on the 40-man roster. Emmanuel Rodriguez is on the 40-man roster. Walker Jenkins is not. So those are things that You're thinking long term here, that if this scenario, we don't want this to happen, but there are some financial implications, some service time implications, and all that is all in play if we get to that point. Again, I hope we don't, but certainly, I think Emma would be the obvious decision if that comes to be. And I hope not. I want Matt to be a daily presence on this team. I want the Moose to do his thing and to hit bombs and to just be an anchor on this team. It just hasn't gone according to plan for him.
That's really interesting perspective there for us to keep an eye on as well. That I don't think many baseball fans are either aware of or need to pay attention more as that becomes more of a reality for next year. Second week in a row, I'm going to ask you about Connor Prelip, who made his home debut earlier this week. What do we make of start number 2?
I like what he's doing. Yeah. I do. And if you just look at some of the advanced, pitching folks that study this, the movement he's getting on his sliders, nasty. His curveball was better the other night. That's a new pitch. He's got plus stuff. Now, for him, we're talking about a guy that threw just over 80 innings last year, and that was a career high. Pitching it every 5 days, this is going to be new for him. Mm-hmm. So I think whenever they get a chance to give him a day or even skip him, they will. Now, a decision is going to come up here at some point. Mick Abel is supposed to throw a bullpen here any day now, and I don't know if it happened the day game on Wednesday, but I think he was supposed to throw a pen either Wednesday or Thursday or maybe even today. So once he gets through that, then all of a sudden we start to get a timeline as to, okay, when could Abel possibly be back? Now, the baseball gods, Dom, as we've discussed in the past, they often have an odd way of working things out. So let's get to that and whose spot does he take? But, Prelip is here to stay for the time being, but I think they're really going to be careful with his innings, and I think they're going to be cautious with, how often he sees a lineup a third time, just so that we'd like to have this guy pitch every 5 or 6 days. So I don't expect him to go 95, 100 pitches, 7, 8 innings, unless he's incredibly efficient anytime soon.
So I have to ask, do you have your binoculars ready for next week in Washington? Because that's like the furthest up press box in the majors, is it not?
Yeah, it's up there. Pittsburgh is like that too. Even Texas. We know what I do for those games is I watch like I'm watching at home because we have a monitor in the booth, and I just literally watch the game. It's like when I was a kid. I'm watching like the Bears game on TV and broadcasting. There's just no reason. So I go from monitor to field. Yep. So I can see where the pitch is. I have an idea where the ball is, and then you track it, a little bit of a beat, and then you find it. So it is what it is. It's, it goes back to when Target Field was built in 2000, when it opened up in 2010. Some of the early renderings of the ballpark had the broadcast booths and even the media up a little bit higher. But Jerry Bell and Dave St. Peter, they were adamant that they wanted to give, everybody a good view of the ballpark on this note, thinking that it was going to help sell not just for us, but other teams that would come to town, help their fans want to come to the ballpark. And so for interleague play, when the Dodgers come in June, or when the Mets were here last year, whomever, the Cubs, when you hear the announcers say, this is such a great ballpark and this is so pretty, this is such a fun place to come, that helps sell the team to the viewers that, hey, the next time their team comes to Target Field, hey, Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, can we go? Because I hear that's a really cool place to call a game. I think that was smart. I'm a little biased, but we just have this great vantage point to do our job every day.
We're TV guys, so I'm obligated to ask you about Sunday's game. Is a Peacock exclusive? Is that right for Sunday?
Correct. I am off on Sunday. Morney's going to call the game with Matt Vasgersian and Dexter Fowler. It's a national game. If you remember the Sunday Roku games we had in the past, Roku's gone, but this will be a Peacock game on Sunday. But Morney will be part of it on Sunday, and I get a rare Sunday off with the family.
Nice. Awesome. Have a great call tonight, bud. Safe travels, and we'll talk next week from Cleveland, okay?
Sounds good, Dom. Thanks, buddy.
There he goes. Cory Provus joining us. Minnesota Twins in action tonight with Toronto. That Sunday game on Peacock will also start. It's 11:30 start because they're exclusive, I think, that 12:30 window. Trey Savage is pitching that game for Toronto, who was the stud of last year's postseason for the Blue Jays in their run to the World Series. So him against Joe Ryan, the starters. But, I know But if you have Peacock, that's to be able to find the game Sunday for the Twins and Jays to wrap up for Minnesota goes to play the Nationals coming up next week. All right, we'll break. We come back. We'll start our second hour. You'll meet the newest Bison football commit who said no to Iowa State and no to Kansas State. Bryce Vignes joins us on the other side of the break when we come back.